What's up, everybody? Happy Monday! Welcome to the monthly open house free episode of the Monday Patron Hang here on GMG. This is an episode of like our live hangout where we catch up, see what we've been doing each week. I get to talk to all the patrons. I get to talk to you lovely people out here in the YouTube land. See what you've been doing, take some questions, talk about what I've worked on this past week and what is coming up going into the week after. So I'm going to go take a quick look at the chat today. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day and had a great weekend watching. Geez, I put out a lot of videos this weekend, didn't I? Well, not like a ton, but I put out a few. I did some reviews for Battletech. I did a cool spaceship indie game called Void Admiral by Paul Bantock out in BC. And I did two other things. We did the 5th Inside Tabletop with Chris. And that was going to be the last one for a minute because I got some Inside Tabletops coming up with a couple other guests. I'm really excited for this Saturday. An author friend of mine, he goes by the pen name of Miles Cameron. If you've ever read The Red Knight or Masters and Mages, that trilogy, he's published over 50 books. And he's coming on basically to do an Inside Tabletop episode on the writing side of tabletop gaming, which I'm super pumped for you guys to be able to check out. And then on Sunday, I did Dungeon Crawl Classic with Jay and my good friend Nick Moran from Breaker Press, who writes the Precipice of Correction and all the Stennard supplements for DCC, which was very fun and very cool. And then this Sunday coming, you'll get to see the actual playthrough of DCC with me and Jay. It's like 2 hours long, so it just took like editing. What's cool about the Inside Tabletop stuff is it's not a huge ask to edit because it's like 30 to 40 minutes. I try and keep them topical and we chop them into like topics. But like a 2-hour playthrough of a funnel for Dungeon Crawl Classic is like a lot of editing. So I didn't do those in the same day. If you are a patron though, and you haven't checked it out yet, if you want to, because a lot of people just listen to playthroughs, it's in the patron only podcast stream. You can go and just listen to that along with all the other, any of the like talkie videos that we do, the interview style podcast videos that are in this studio are available as podcasts in the Patron podcast RSS feed. So anyway, there is the week that came. Holy moly, there's 50 of you here already. This is a lot. And hi everybody. Let's see who's here. Let's jump in. Mike Grimshaw's here. Gizmo Math Boy's here. Kudos Budo's here. Go for it. Painting's here. Nick Butler's here. He's going to trick me into saying something later that will be an inside joke that nobody else gets, or someone else will. There's a legitimate like plot, like some kind of like insurrection happening in the mailbag that most of you won't understand until we have a few of these free episodes on our belt. But there will be something there's like a bingo stamp that everyone's going to get, I think, at this point. We'll see how it goes. Milliput's here. Ryan Dunphy's here. Buy This Axe is here. Alan Nuttall's here. Zug at 1974 is here. Paul Shorten's here. And he's excited about Void Admiral. So am I. I get to dust off all the... I'm going to paint new ships for like the campaign we try and do, but I'm going to dust off all of my brigade models that I used for A Billion Stars to try it out this week. Atragon X says, I'm still behind on Grimdark Media. This puppy's taking up all my free time. Puppies do that. What's cool is if you go to the podcast feed though, you can put earbuds in and you can listen to the Grimdark Medias and just like freely take care of your puppy at the same time. It's like a hands-free version of Grimdark Media. And this was a particularly cool one, I think. Paul's painting Warhammer Underworld stuff. That's cool. Christopher Fan says, your Starfleet Battles description took me back many years. A Starship game for those that like accounting or Battletech. It's not wrong. It was so funny because like as soon as I was like remembering people playing Star Trek Starfleet Battles, I was instantly like transported back to like watching the sidebar in that game because the sidebar is like immense. Like there's so much stuff to like the right hand side of the table, and the first thing, like the first Google image search thing that came up when I just searched Starfleet Battles rulebook is just this like massive pile of binders. It's so funny. It's so funny what just a difference in how we approach that kind of game is, because it was such a simulation before. It was like trying to use theater of the mind to imagine what's happening and have the RNG like create these situations in a Starfleet engagement in Star Trek. Is very funny and very cute. Who else is here? Barry Shepard's here. Colin Morrison's here. Colin Morrison, More Time Bat Rep was really sweet. Did you get any extra scenery? I have leads on most of it at this point. So wait for the next series, and because like it's going to catch up, right? So wait for the Middenheimer series I'm doing with Chase to end, which will be in 2 more weeks, because you'll get one on Thursday and then one the following Thursday. And that should catch up on like what I've managed to get my hands on or not. So if anyone's searching for things, if you're waiting to message me, then you'll know in March, basically. Optimal Game State's here. Daniel Sprinkle says a single square bingo win. Oh no, sorry, he says hi. I gives him my voice, said a single square bingo win. Metal Sheep 714 made it to the FREEPISODE. I'm glad you did. By the Sack says, haven't played any naval ship combat games, but Void Admiral looks pretty sweet. It does look pretty sweet. And if you're into that super cheap wargaming, making stuff out of clothespins, you will be ready to rock and roll. Ryan Dunphy's here. He said, my Army Painter Fanatic paints are in my community mailbox waiting for me to get home. I'm super stoked to try them out and paint up the minis I bought from you at HalCon. Oh, I'm excited that you get to paint them up. I actually, speaking of HalCon and previewing more Steel Rift stuff, I got to check out today from Austin Death Ray Designs their next expansion. So this is one I didn't write. I wrote the first 2. This is their expansion that's going to be coming at Adepticon, and it looks friggin' sweet. I'm really excited for it. It brings a whole new layer to the game of a different style of combat, and the mechs and models that he has made look tremendous as usual. Rick Spears is here. You're meal prepping and listening. Cool. What are you meal prepping? Terry Halo says, hello, freeloader reporting for duty. Well, enjoy. It's not freeloading. Just keep commenting and drive me into the algorithm. Because Lord knows I don't do anything that's algorithmically popular. So I need you guys to engage. Otherwise, no one will ever see Grimdark Media. Because I'm making videos that only the patrons care about at this point. And I'm not mad enough or happy enough to engage the algorithm. John Sadler says, what is an indie war game you think is underrated gem most people need to try out? So there's a couple, but like, remember, these are all to my taste. So there's going to be a certain amount of like, oh, I wish more people played this. But remember, there's like my bias is kind of engaged there, where it's like, oh, I like old minis. This is kind of retro. Or I like weird procedural stuff. So this is kind of neat. 2 I can think of right now. One I'm actually getting ready to do, like it's a slog because I'm trying to actually do like this thing called 5 Days to Play, where I do all the prep on camera. So I'm needing to make time for that. One is Warlord Ascendant, which is that skirmish game that I'm about to try out, which is kind of like a Dark Souls-y sort of like procedurally generated board engagement game that I'm kind of pumped for. And then on the like sci-fi side, because that's a fantasy one, on the sci-fi side I'd say Planet 28, because Planet 28 is cool as hell, and it's very like Rogue Trader-esque but minimalist fighting. And the Doomed, I'm really pumped to play the Doomed. Bill Payne's here and says hello. Brian Krantz is here. 3D printing episode was really insightful, and I wish all stores were as cool, but it is Chris. Yeah, I mean, that is, I think, one of the big benefits Chris and Jay have is just their time in the industry. They've both been in it for almost 20 years now, which means that they approach everything as if they don't understand it. And that's, I think, a really important distinction, is if you approach everything to gain knowledge of the thing before you make a decision, you make a better decision. They don't put their bias on anything usually. I mean, there will be times they will. I shouldn't say never, but then I'm speaking for them. But they're both people who are curious about the person in front of them, and they're legitimately trying to run a business where you want to come back, right? Like not that they're making you come back or they're like sweetening the pot for you to come back, but it's like, oh no, this person's actually listening to me and is trying to pair me up with the things I might like that are in here. That feels good, so I'll come back. Like that's their goal when running a business. They want to be surrounded by people that like the same shit as them, and so they're trying to like actively engage with them. What else we got? Terry Hale, I do love the Grimdark Media. It's always the top of my viewing list. I'm glad. Chris Sly's here. How dare you? I only shoot from the hip. Chris is watching. You can ask Chris all the questions that you want now because he's in the chat. You do not, and you never shoot from the hip, which is very funny for you to say that. Sean says, have you seen the Trench Crusade playtest rules? It looks like Mordheim with Last War vibes and a neat wound mechanic. Yeah, I shared them on my page, actually, on Facebook. Zug1974 says, are you allowed to use the shed load of White Dwarf fantasy card buildings in Dam 28? Might be a good source of ruins. I could only, they don't really fit the art style though. Like that's the thing, is like the cardboard buildings for Mordheim have that very specific, they've been painted by the same art team. And so they fit that aesthetic and they're ruined. And the same people made that one cardstock building that's in the 6th box because Thomas Perrin also wrote 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So like it all kind of carries forward. And then the hard foam stuff is just in that style from the period. So maybe like, I'm pretty sure if I can get my hands on the stuff I listed, I have like a nice 3x3 full of terrain. And to be fair, like Mordheim plays a lot better on a 3x3 than a 4x4. Because in a 4x4 game, everyone runs the first turn. Like nothing interesting happens on turn 1. And I've always hated that playing on a 4x4 of Mordheim. So I just want to feel like a 3x3. And I think we'll be fine. I'm not reading that Gizmo Math Boy. I saw the end. I think the algo would appreciate you working on a Wargame expansion in the world of blankety blank. I'm not going to do it. You have to trick me. You have to get me to read out loud. The chat will never trick me. Only the mailbag. Optimal Game State says, have you seen Blackout? I'm trying to find a nice Future War skirmish game to scratch an itch, and I'm only finding a few options. I have not seen Blackout, but there's also like Spectre Ops, which are available also through Black Site Studio. So there's a couple ways to like get into that. Spectre Miniatures. Yeah, there's a few indie games that are that way. Do we get sent a ton of games to check out and review? Do I get sent a ton of games to check out and review? What percentage of them end up on your channel? That's an interesting question. I do. So the ones that end up on my channel, kind of the first prerequisite, because a lot of what I get sent, I would say 66, like 2/3 of what I get sent is like stuff that's not done. It's like someone who has a idea or they have their like Word document and it's like, hey, could you help me get my head around this? Or what do you think about this? Or I'm trying to finish this. And that I physically don't have time to like review them all. So like I might skim it if it looks interesting or if it's mostly complete and give like a few bits of feedback. But usually I'll come back and be like, hey, when you like, don't listen to me, write what you want to write and send it to me when it's done. And then I'll give you my opinion. Because nothing's ever finished. If you're self-publishing something, it's going up digitally. You can just review and edit and copy and finish things anyway. Like, don't worry about it being perfect, but get it done so that I can actually have like an opinion. And then I would say that like of those things, I usually pick the ones if I think it's like, oh yeah, this has legs, like this works, like this functions from reading it, then I'll usually give it a review and like put it forward. Cause like, I also don't want to throw something up that's not done for somebody and have like way too many people put eyes on it and have it kind of collapse. Cause that's really discouraging for an author too. So I kind of have to be careful with that. And I tend to like navigate that kind of carefully, if I can, cause I'm conscious of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help. And so I have to kind of like manage what that means. Kim Glute's here. Oh my God, we're almost 100 people. Biossack says, I wrote and published my own game because you inspired me. Oh, thank you. And Grimdark had me help me get back into writing in general. It's funny how it hasn't got me back into writing yet, but it's gotten me back into loving structure and writing and like the how the sausage is made stuff. Because of so much of what I went to school for is about analyzing media, right? Like if you study English, you study literature, you study writing, then you're paying someone to teach you about tools and then you go off and figure out how you're going to use them. And that's typically like structure, pacing, narrative, you know what I mean? And plot. And those things actually have like a thing you can look at. Sorry, man, you have a drink of water. They have things you can assess. And so when you get to looking at other people's media, you have like a template you can lay over it and things you can kind of like look at. And so I really enjoy that. Like I really like that part, and Grimdark Media has kind of put me back into the state of mind where I get to like use those tools and talents again, which I think is probably going to lead to me starting to write again. Terry Hale says, I'm up for playing Mordheim any day with people who are in it for the narrative and fun and not someone claiming everyone has a shield, sword, helmet in their backpack or something like that. Yeah. I mean, yes, that is how you play Mordheim. All right. So I'm going to jump in and we are going to hit the patron mailbag so we can see what everybody is doing. And it's going to load slowly because things are streaming. Come on. Ah, here we go. The big question, Doc. All right, let's take a question from the mailbag. Is it full? Oh, Jesus, it's full. Okay, and there's people writing it right now. Oh, God. Tom Koosh, Borderlands the movie. Why? because movie studios right now are terrified of their return on investment being bad. And so all they're making are sequels, prequels, and based upons. And the big studios will only, because they're being run by people who hate art, who want a sure thing. They hate art and like money. They don't want to create something for the sake of creating it. They want to create something for the point of making money. So they took a video game franchise that's established. They paid someone to write a script for it, and they're trying to make a new Guardians of the Galaxy. But Borderlands, the movie, is the result of that cynical studio process of going, okay, last 10 years, movies from Disney that made the most money consistently. Guardians 1, Guardians 2, Guardians 3. Oh shit, okay. What's a property that kind of looks like that? Ragtag bunch of people. Okay. What's the one that made the most consistent money? Okay. Like, it's the most 4-quadrant movie decision making a studio could make. That's why Borderlands the movie. You have a return on investment video game franchise being hunted, and then 4-quadrant compared to the most recent return on capital film franchise. And they went, these kind of look the same. I guarantee it's just going to be Guardians. They're going to try and make a Guardians of the Galaxy. It's going to have a similar like style soundtrack, not necessarily the deep cut 70s stuff that they had in Guardians, but like the same feel. It'll have kind of like a meta like feel to it. Same like Misfit Crew stuff. Like look at the casting. It's going to be all the same people. So that's why, because it's cynical, and good movies, good mid-budget movies now come from 4 or 5 studios getting together under the A24 brand. I'm just going to keep standing for A24. I just ordered a bunch of their merch actually, because I love A24 so much. That's why A24 is the way that you will see quality films. I actually took Jay out to the movies last weekend. Not this past weekend, the weekend before that. And we went and saw Iron Claw, which is the one about the Von Erichs. And it was gut-wrenching, and it was incredible, and the amount of work the actors put into a mid-budget drama about 80s wrestling families was insane. It's a movie you could only make if you cared about the topic and you wanted to make a good movie. Nothing about it is like, let's make a successful franchise or let's go make money. It was we are all collecting together to try and make a story. Like, Zac Efron transformed his body in the most insane way I think I've ever seen. It is a wild transformation. And then they got actual wrestlers to train those guys to be wrestlers. So Borderlands, the movie, is the cynical side of that. A24, the Iron Claw, all those movies, The Witch, like in the A24 movie, is the opposite of that, because they don't make art. There's a very long answer to a 3-word question. T-Bird, I'm really looking forward to seeing The Doomed. Do you know when you're getting to it? The next time Chase comes in. So Chase did the first. Chase basically, like, I need pushes sometimes. Chase pushed me by being like, no, I'm not telling you what I'm excited about. We've been playing Infinity for a while. You tell me from this list of things I could bring in what you're excited about. And I went, I really want to do a project just for me. And that's how Damn 25 happened. The Doomed is next. I told him when he left, he's like, I really want to do this. You've already painted the minis for it. Just bring that back next time you come down. So as soon as Chase gives me his next, like, hey, this is a damn free, we're going to record Doomed. Rick Spears. Hey, Ash, have you heard of Pro Hammer, a kind of Warhammer remastered for 3rd to 5th edition? The developers consider this the high watermark of 40K before the overcomplicatedness of 6th and 7th and the streamlining of 8th. They made an entire rule set. It's pretty incredible. If you have time, it's a chunky rule book. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and you link Pro Hammer rules. I'll check it out. I obviously can't comment on it now, but there's a shout out to the Pro Hammer rules. This feels like the same kind of middle hammer kind of standing for like 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where there was a time where, like, it's funny because it almost happens generationally. 3rd and 4th edition Warhammer 40,000 are actually made by roughly the same design team as made 1st and 2nd. Right? Rick Priestley's still in the studio, mentoring people. Andy's writing for it. Like, you have a bunch of people who grew together trying to, like, iterate on ideas and bring forward something that they think is really good. And so you get this kind of like distillation from this kind of really messy punk rock thing with Rogue Trader. Because Rogue Trader by the end of it was basically 2nd edition 40K because they were iterating through 2nd edition, realizing it's very heavy in one side, making a war game. And then kind of like fine-tuning that war game with 4th edition. This feels like someone trying to do that again. Paul Shorten, why is Star Trek Away Mission so good? You keep telling me that. I'm going to paint them. I have them in the back. I will get to them. I really want to find someone that loves Star Trek the way I love Star Trek to play it with, though. Paul Shorten, got any thoughts on a good 10 mil fantasy game? Oh, no, we already asked that one. Damn it. Some of these are from last week. Oh, because I didn't delete them. God damn it. Nick Butler, what do you think of the new rumors of Rogue Trader in GW's Combat Patrol? The callback to Grimdark Origins and new type ranges of minis profile cards are now available for download, and apparently you can play as Cregan Master Carter Sergeant Cleo. Nick, that was such a, oh my God. I started reading the names, and until I got to Cleo, I didn't realize he was making me make a Cleopatra 2525 reference. There you go, I said it. Stanford bingo cards. Nick got me again. This is turning to my Mac and Me. I feel like Conan O'Brien being Mac and Mead over and over and over again. See, the longer he goes on, the more likely I am to get committed to reading it, the more likely I am to make the reference. Fucking Nick. In the year 2525. This is what he's here for. He's really here for that. All right, Chris Banks. What do you think of Mantic kickstarting Epic Warpath? Is it a genuine challenger to Legio Imperialis or Legions Imperialis? No, it's not. They want to sell. They're doing what they always do. And this isn't cynical. This isn't wrong. If there's an interest in that scale, they want to provide people with miniatures to play in that scale. So if that scale is now interesting to people, they want to be able to have like a core kind of like generic market presence for buildings in that scale, terrain in that scale, bikes in that scale, infantry in that scale. That's Mantic's thing, right? Like, yes, they have all their own properties and yes, they make their own games, but they are doing it in a way where they understand their core business is like, no, we want to make stuff that's kind of for everybody and you could get away with using it for almost anything. And so I don't think it's it's funny because I don't think with Mantic it's all that cynical. They started in kind of a cynical place, but they've kind of moved into this place where I'm comfortable with what they do. Cause they're sort of like every country has a grocery store that's like the prestige grocery store, but then the same corporation that owns that grocery store owns a slightly cheaper grocery store version. I feel like that's where Mantic has like found their niche, where they're like, no, we understand people are on a budget and we want to provide this. And we really like the games we make. And we've got a bunch of people who have worked all over in Wargaming that we think make a cool other offer version. And that's what they want to do. And they want to offer like an alternative, basically. I don't know why I'm weirdly like, it feels less cynical to me when Mantic does it, but I think maybe it's the designers involved and the fact that they always make an effort to make it their own thing too and be excited about it, while still recognizing like, no, but we're also going to sell a lot of this to people that just want like cool generic buildings. Like, like they're all at war terrain for the zombie apocalypse. It was just fantastic post-apocalyptic terrain, right? They also made like all these cool things like arcades and what's the other stuff, like hospital ruins and stuff. Gizmo Mathboy says, what do you think of your new career as a sound engineer? I'll be honest. I had a conversation with a friend, actually went for a walk this morning, and I was describing to her, because we hadn't caught up in a while. I was describing to her what the process had been, like fixing up the studio. And I said, like, one of the really interesting things was I had to teach myself all these new skills, but that was like the most rewarding part, was diving into things like doing sound engineering and like expanding my toolkit and like seeing what else this place could be. I mean, I think you guys can tell, like do I not seem more motivated, right? Do I not seem more interested in what I'm doing? Trying different stuff, making things that are like more, I don't know, like look around, like more me, like it's talking about music and movies. And yeah, because I think that ultimately that's what GMG's turned into, is that you guys don't necessarily watch because I do a specific, like I'm not a specific topic, like artist, you know what I mean? I am more like a collection of, hey, we all of these things kind of Venn diagram around each other, right? Like I like all kinds of music, and I like all kinds of games, and I like all kinds of books, and I like all kinds of films, and they all have this kind of same like counterculture-y theme, there's a lot of people out there like me, because that's who comments and that's who my patrons are. And I think that's why the community in my Patreon is such a big part of it. Like, we chat and we get together every Monday and we talk, and it feels good because we all, like, when we're done, when I shut down the video and we log off, we all walk away and go put our earbuds in and listen to the same books on tape, or, you know, put a record on and listen to the same music, or play some video game, like, or watch the same movie, or think about making me say Cleopatra 2525, right? Like that's kind of the spirit of where GMG's moved to, and pushing my skill set into things like designing a room that captures audio really well, and then figuring out what the technology behind that would be, and then how do you audio engineer that stuff and have a sound panel, and then automate it all so I can do it while I'm alone, you know what I mean? Because I do all this by myself. That makes it more rewarding, because it's just me kind of stretching out to interact with you guys better and in a more meaningful way. And for you guys to feel like you're a part of it, because that's the goal, right? Is that people, I now have a studio that people can come visit, and I'm not like, oh no, it's just a shit pit full of miniatures, right? Like, it's now a place where I can actually, like, have a great conversation. Like, tomorrow you're going to see the first Silver Bayonet Canada video that I shot with my friend Christian. I mentioned him earlier, the author. And we shot one video to Inside Tabletops, because he's such a fascinating guy. And if you're listening, Christian, I'm sorry, I'm not blowing smoke at you. But then we also just sat and talked for 12 hours. That's what this place has turned into. If people come and visit, and anyone's welcome to come and visit, especially my patrons, it's not just my friends, but I wanted to turn this place into a place that felt like that you were going there and you were, like, hanging out and sharing a bunch of common stuff with people that you kind of interact with parasocially, but you have stuff in common with. I'm kind of trying to take the para out of the parasocial, if that makes sense. All right, I should check on the chat, because I haven't looked at it in a bunch of time, and see how many people are here and what's going on. Because I've been now going off like crazy. Oh my God, it's way away from me. I have to try to find out where we stopped. All right, there's Ryan's last thing. Cran says the 3 printing episode was really insightful, and I wish also, no, we already read that one. Ash actively fights the algorithm. I don't fight it. I'm just not, like, I'm not interested in it. Everything I just said, I couldn't make, like, algorithmic, like, I ordered these 3 things off Wish, what are the best, kind of like search term appropriate videos, because I would hate doing it. Like, with the amount of content I produce, the amount of work I put in, so that, you know, I can do this for a living and support and be flexible, so that I can be a single dad and be with my kids and raise them. And then when I'm with them, I'm with them. And when I'm here. It has to be stuff I'm passionate about. It has to be engaging, or I would not have made it almost 10 years. Like, I'm in my 10th year of doing this right now. Right. And figuring that out saved this place last summer when it was about to go away. Right. Like, when that crisis happened and I said, this place, I don't think I can keep doing this, because, well, and I mean, we're not safe yet, but I've made it this far. It only happened because I changed what I was doing. Right. I dove back in and was like, no, I'm not just going to work harder at doing the same thing. I'm going to double down on myself and on you guys. And I'm going to make stuff that I actually think is just fun and, like, enriching. And I couldn't do that and make it algorithmic, because it would just be so cynical. All right. Where did we get to? Jez Hunt says, I love that Mordheim's having a real renaissance at the moment. I think so too. Go for it, Bang says, don't forget to hit the like button. You said it, not me. And then information squirreled away. Kim Glued's here. All right. I'm sorry, been looking forward to hanging out. I'm glad you're here, man. What else we got? Metal Sheep 714 reporting in. Started with sci-fi adaptation of Frostgrave while waiting for Stargrave, and then I wrote my own sci-fi game. That's awesome. It's funny, I almost played, I said this to Joe, I almost played Frostgrave with nothing but Star Wars, what's the game, the board game? The Star Wars board game that came before Legion and Armada, Star Wars, whatever it was called. The one with the board game miniatures. I almost played it with that. And the wizards were just Jedis, and the people were just stormtroopers and mercenaries and rebels. You could 1-to-1, like your barbarian's a Gamorrean. You know what I mean? Like, you could just 1-to-1 use the Star Wars, like whatever that dungeon crawler game was called. Not Legion. Shit, I've forgotten it now. Anyone, the chat's probably screaming it. But I could definitely, you could just 1-to-1 play it and have them be on Hoth or something. Triple Digit Games, not only movie studios, it seems like 90% of all video games are remakes and remasters. They're really doing that, aren't they? I mean, it's like, if you think the like, it's funny because we did that episode on a monopolistic market and whether or not you think that like studios coming and going and like, is there space for indie studios in tabletop is bad with like between Hasbro Wizards and Workshop and Asmodee and like the board game market and all the card game market. The video game market is such a bigger fucking nightmare. It's crazy. Like, you're scared even to start a studio because you might just get gobbled up. And when you get gobbled up, you get stripped for parts, and then your project you worked for 5 years on just gets thrown away. It is like like everyone I know who works in the video game industry is starting their own studios, going direct to crowdfunding for the most part, or Steam Greenlight, and just being like, I want nothing to do with the mainstream video game industry. Like, it is, if we talk about undermarket and tabletop, the undermarket in video games is wild. And it is a war zone. I got a couple of friends who work in the video game industry, and like their stories put everything in tabletop to shame because it's so much money. It's like a movie studio amount of money now that they spend on these things, and some of them just don't happen. Sean said, "Oh God, is there a Borderlands movie coming? How will I manage to ruin the writing in something that was already trash?" I think you could do a Borderlands movie. I think you could do a Borderlands Prime TV show. If you got like the people that did like Invincible or The Boys to do something like that, and you made it like just fucked up, like you just had to be out of its mind, you could get away with it. The problem is it'll be a studio film and it will not be as out of his mind as it could be. Rick Pierce says, "Preach." I'm not sure what I'm preaching, but I hope it's good. Ryan MC says A24 is great. It's true. Gary Jensen says, "Random observation. After a couple of years of magnetizing, I really don't magnetize for WYSIWYG. I magnetize because I enjoy playing dress up with my dollies." I mean, isn't that the point of everything though, is personal satisfaction? We talked about that in the 3D printing video where it's like, yeah, but some people just enjoy putting models together. And that's why 3D printing will never be for them, because they like the meditative process of like cleaning the pieces, posing it specifically. And how there was a problem even in model design now where like that one build, one way of doing things model kit was a problem for them as a consumer. Like there's a bunch of stuff there, I think. The Lighthouse was out there. I loved it, but it was out there. Yeah. I mean, it was out of its mind, and it was also kind of an H.P. Lovecraft movie, or maybe they're just, drinking the alcohol that goes into the lighthouse and basically being on bath salts. Terry Halo says the bleakest book, or among the bleakest books I've read, is a noir book taking place in 1794 in Stockholm. I'm sure how grimdark noir is though. I mean, it can be like, it's all vibes, right? It's not just vibes. It's also, theme and like tone and like the story itself. It's funny, grimdark. I'm so glad I picked it as the theme for that whole series, because surprising things can be grimdark. Like, I would love to do like a grimdark film review of Demolition Man, because ironically it is super, like, once you get past the comedy and the humor and the 90s-ness of it, it is friggin' bleak. Like, it is a crazy society they're living in. Same with Dread, Brazil. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's like, you don't think of it that way until you break it down. Chase Zero says, I'm excited for the Doom. I'm excited for the Doom too. Jim Kerman's asked, when will the new Steel Rift stuff land? Can we expect some plays on the channel? I miss Steel Rift session reports. Yeah, I'm planning on playing some of it when the new book comes out to help support it, because that's what I can do to support it on DRD. And I'll feel better about playing it when it's something I didn't write. You know what I mean? You guys know I have that like weird hang up about writing, like doing a lot of like, I want my stuff to stand on its own. I don't want to stand for it too much. But I'm more happy to share like other people doing reports for it or reviews and stuff instead. Okay, we've gotten to the part where I actually said it. There we go. What else we got in here? Nick Butler said, of course, I can't always post these questions. We must all work together to slide them into the show. That's it. Because it has to, like, if Nick does it all the time, I will get wise. But if it changes up and it isn't Nick next time, then I will get suckered into it. It has to, you guys, like the amount of like, it has to be like a team effort. It gets really hardcore after a while. Alan Wong says, I feel like Mantic doesn't get enough respect. Kings of War is cool, but not for me. And Dead Zone's actually criminally underrated. It's awesome and possibly the best intro game out there. I would agree on both those counts. Like that, I honestly think that, like, again, it's about asking yourself more nuanced looks or like questions about things and looking at it and going, where does this sit with me and where does this sit for other people? Because where it sits with other people and you can often like inform the bigger picture, right? Something that's not for you can still be like really resonant and important if you break it down from other people's points of view. So I think it's really important to like ask those questions. And Lee Millward apparently agrees with you, Alan. Sean says, your stuff got me and my sister into Wargaming with Frostgrave. I love that series where they played against the guy with the Dirt Golem warband. I hope to see it again someday. Yeah, me too. Those original Frostgrave ones were super fun. Mel of the Shinobi, I also try and take out the para from the social and just bother people. Yeah, you sure too. Gizmo Boy, I think the lo-fi tech way you did things were what set you apart. It's like holding the camera the entire playthrough and seeing the rolls and what in general view of the table. Yeah, I think so too. There's like, it's trying to find that balance, right, between that kind of like more over the shoulder camera style and like a fixed camera style and different shots. Like there's so many ways of doing things. I'm learning so much about like even just cinematography and shooting and stuff as well, and what works and what doesn't. Imperial Assault, there we go. Malev got it. Everyone yelled Imperial Assault, Accidental Jedi. It's really funny. Jim German says, completely tangentially and not tabletop minis gaming, but Star Wars Rebellion, the board game by FFG, is excellent as an H2H Star Wars game. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Kujus Buddha says it's a bit too far to visit. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where at least we're next to like Niagara Falls, so if you need an excuse to like plan a trip, you can come see one of the natural wonders of the world, I guess, and then come play some games. Mikey Jenkins says, I love games like Rangers of Shadow Deep, and I've been watching your vids on it recently, Frostgrave, etc. I managed to get my partner involved in a kind of halfway house between RPGs and full war games. It's funny how those games, because like, again, they got really popular during the pandemic, but there's an element to those cooperative games where I think they're way more accessible for someone who's never played tabletop games before, because it's you guys against the game. It's a lot harder to teach somebody something when they're competing against you and they don't know what they're doing because they feel like the win-lose is out of their control. But when you're both cooperating to beat the game, success or failure isn't binary and you're both trying to win. So like they're just in a led position as opposed to a like disadvantaged position. So I think it's really important that those games exist because I do think they're actually a criminally underrated on-ramp into tabletop gaming because of the nature of them inherently. And I think more of them should be used to get people into wargaming. 700110111. I think that when I finally got to the habit of filing away sprue marks and mold lines, the building process is now my least favorite step of the hobby. Yeah, it's for me too. It's funny. I hate building miniatures. I'm actually one of those people where like, I understand it. I intrinsically get it. But like, because I'm so like time conscious and time crunched all the time, the building part is not great. It's not my favorite part. Nick Butler says, gives math, but I feel there's a few of us that can work together to keep hope alive. The amount of Cleopatra 25 references. I feel like especially during the free episodes, they're going to want me to do it even more because it's funnier when it's like everything. Like there's more payoff for you guys when you troll me when there's an audience, right? Because we have 100 people watching as opposed to like the 30 to 40 that are able to tune in for the Patron one, which I think is funny. AAA games failing left and right, but smaller studios are filling the quality gap. Tons of top games of 2023 are from smaller countries. You're right. You're not wrong. Yeah, Helldivers 2 and Dwarf Fortress are complete successes. It's funny how Helldivers 2 is so Starship Troopers and so Warhammer 40,000, but done the like Sandy Mitchell tongue-in-cheek Blackadder way. Oh my God, I love it so much. Games Workshop wishes they made Helldivers 2. They could have made Helldivers 2 if they weren't so precious about their IP and they were able to like not take it seriously. They made Bolt Gun, which is an attempt at that. The problem is Bolt Gun's too old-fashioned and doesn't have the social component. Bolt Gun was for nobody, but is great, by the way. I've played Bolt Gun with my kid a whole bunch on PS4 because that's all we have. But Helldivers 2 looks like it is literally a cross between like Paul Verhoeven Starship Troopers and like a a meme version, you know what I mean? Like a 4chan version of Deathcore of Krieg, an image board version of Deathcore of Krieg memes, which is very funny. Mike Grimshaw's here, arrived by 2525. Oh my God, I got a super like, whoa, from Ragnar. Holy crap. I'm here once again to recommend Pathologic 2 is the most grim video game ever made. Okay, I'm writing it down. Thanks for all the videos, Ash. Thank you, dude. Ragnar 1999. I've gotten like 4 super light chats or whatever it is during my entire life. So I get all like crazy happy. Ragnar 19999. And what's the game called? The game's called Pathologic 2. Okay, I'll YouTube it. The one problem is because I'm a Mac guy, if it's on Steam, but it's not Mac available, I can't play it sometimes. So then I just go and I like watch the like gameplay playthroughs and stuff like that and get an opinion of it anyway. Which Jay and I have both been doing. It's funny because he has a PC though, so we have like the opposite problem. Mike Gershai made it late, but at least I arrived by 25:25. That's so great. Brazil is a movie I watch and feel genuinely empty inside afterwards. It's so good, but so bleak. Exactly. And yet it's also so funny, like so comedically great. Nick says, living here in Horsham, there's a pretty large AAA game company and there's constantly new studios appearing. Absolutely. John Ashley Smith says, have you ever heard of Strike Team Alpha circa 1978? I haven't. And hey there, from Up the QW, Strike Team Alpha. Sounds like it's like an advanced squad leader style thing. If it's from 1978, it's probably, if it's in that like bookshelf style war games, I'll do some Googling. Ollie Knox says Epic Warpath looks amazing. It does look cool. I think that stuff looks great. Kuzbu says like Mortal Engines. Yeah. Mortal Engines is another grimdark thing. Like Mortal Engines is, I actually read all 3 of those books before I saw the movie and weirdly enjoyed them a lot. The concept of predator cities is such a like interesting thing. Jim Kerman says, GW announced today that early seasons Underworld Warbands are being re-released with updated decks and rules to play the current game, and this shocked me. I never thought they'd support that way. I mean, I think that's a great... I think you're going to see more of that because they have such a... They've been releasing shit so fast. They must have a warehouse full of molds that they are paying to store and insure that are simply not making any money. I think the Old World is such a great example of that, and I think that, like... more and more they're looking at ways to monetize their back catalog, because if it's at some point that splash release methodology of like 52 years or 52 releases a year, you just start to run out of space yourself. That conveyor belt's nonstop. You've got stuff that's just sitting there costing you money. So like it makes sense that they would do that simply because they need to make a bit of money on it to justify its existence. Terrier Halo says, in the original European release of Demolition Man, it wasn't Taco Bell, it was Pizza Hut, badly dubbed over for Stallone. You can still see the video window vibrate and the Pizza Hut logo sit still. That's amazing. I didn't realize that. Well, I mean, that was the franchise wars. I guess Taco Bell paid more money. Brian Krantz says, Jim Crewman's, those warbands are impossible to find. Well, I mean, yes, I'm glad they're back. Gizzard Boy says, I think Ash needs to create a camera rig that is kind of like the lights the Marines wore in Aliens, like literally over the shoulder. The problem with that is that like you'd get like seasick. Like at least in my holding it like steady cam, it's relatively under control. If I'm looking around, it would just whip paint everywhere. It'd be bad. Jess Hunt says Rangers, or Gary B says, hi Ash. Hi Gary B. Rangers is one of the best gateway games around, in my opinion. I've introduced a total non-gamer to the hobby that way. Absolutely. Malev says, accessibility and inclusion and cooperative is a huge driver for me right in Catacombs of Corral. It's another great example. When peeps play reports of it, I'm so hyped. Yeah, man, I had a great time playing it. Caldorf says, Bullet Gun's great. It is pretty great, actually. Ryan Niffy says, it's almost like people who are passionate about making games make better games. I think you're absolutely right. Bill Payne says, I'm looking forward to more Time 25 throughout the year, Damn 25. Any rumors of GW doing an anniversary box set? I honestly think it's the Blood Meridian of miniature games. Like, I don't have any inside track on any of that stuff, but I don't think you could remake it for like a bunch of reasons. The biggest of which is it is an of its time property made during like millennial tension, right? So like, if you're making something about a millennium space on a millennium with these old school like style rules. It would be like one of the reasons they don't bring Warhammer Quest back is they'd have to make all new cardboard, the original Warhammer Quest. I do think there's value in doing it, but they would need to have, I guess they have access to the molds, so it's probably the most likely to come back, but at the same time, the least likely to have the impact you would think it would have. Although I would argue that you should buy it. And it is great. Captain Crankle says, Pathological 2 is very grim. Gary B says, Vulcan's a boomer shooter like Doom. It's a niche market. Absolutely. Everyone's okay, cool. Like everyone's liking the Pathological thing. I did see that Demon Hunter's Cascade just came out too. Grayson Bill says, if you're a Mac guy, when are you doing Myth the Fallen Lords as Grimdark game? Oh, I don't think I've ever played Myth the Fallen Lords. Is it just Myth? Is it like a walking simulator with puzzles? Because I've played Myth. Or was that Myst? No, there was one called Myth too, right? I'm just probably losing my mind. Myth the Fallen Lords. This will be good like laying in bed when I can't sleep at 2 a.m. Subject for doom scrolling. So much of my Grimdark media research comes from insomnia, where you're just like, I can't sleep. I guess I'll watch 2 hours of videos on this video game I've never heard of. All right. Alan Wong, what do you think about the D&D and board game on-ramp into Wargaming versus 40K? I've seen more people coming into the hobby from that angle, and given the audience size, I wonder if it'll be the future main on-ramp. Well, so interestingly, I'm just writing so many notes. I need to actually sit back here. I'm going to drink water too, because I've been running around. Hang on. So one of the things that I think that RPGs had as a bonus in the last decade is they got a bunch of main, like the nostalgia wave caught up to their time. So if we had like 60s nostalgia, 70s, like if I'm gonna make an assumption that most of the people watching are in roughly the same 20-year life demographic as me, so like between, let's say, late 20s and early 40s, then you've seen the waves of like 60s nostalgia, 70s nostalgia. We hit 80s nostalgia, and because of that, you had Stranger Things, and you had The Big Bang Theory, and you had all this stuff that like glorified people roughly in your age bracket liking a thing and having that be like their defining personality trait. And that made it okay for it to be popular. And so you had that big D&D boom and stuff like that. So it benefited from that again. So what almost happened was we had like a reverse satanic panic where people were loving something because it was new and because it was kind of edgelordy. Now they were loving it because, and one, also because it was engaging and different. No one had ever done it before. But now it was also, we've got it been like, it's now permissive and okay. You know what I mean? And you can be Leonard and play D&D, but the hot blonde girl across the hall from you will marry you eventually. Like that was the messaging in mass market media all of a sudden. And so I think that on-ramped a bunch of people into being like, I was always curious about this. It looks cool because this TV show told me it was cool, and kids are doing it in Stranger Things, and Rick and Morty's referencing it. So let's try this thing. There's a Futurama episode about it. And it became like kind of okay. And so that then led to people thinking like, oh, but then everything's okay. Like, oh, hang on. I don't have to worry about being socially stigmatized for playing games with my friends and hanging out. Cool. And then that became cool, right? And you had like the board game boom and the card game boom and like, you know, hipsters sitting in coffee shops all playing D&D. And I think the market has really benefited from that 80s nostalgia boom where all of these things that were like physical present social activities, we're all starved for connection, right? Like the reason everyone is engaging in parasocial shit, which is what we're doing right now, but I'm trying to make it more social and interactive because I'm paying attention to everything that's happening in front of me, is because we're all starved for connection, because we're all stuck going to work, coming home, taking care of all our priorities. We're all on treadmills for the most part, unless you're very lucky and very mindful. And so something like a mass market game that you physically come together to do, or you've now got parasocial ways of doing it. Like Jay does like a Zoom D&D session every week with his friends that live all over, like, you know, BC, Alberta, all over the place. Having something be permissive and be different and something you hadn't experienced before, but also be socially interactive, I think it was all right place, right time. And so you had like people that wanted something like that, or didn't even know they wanted it, but once they tried it, were like, oh my God, this feels great. I'm laughing with people in real time. Like that feels really good. You know, they just hang out. And then being given like permission to do it by mass market media because they're just cynically riding the nostalgia wave, and then having this boom of options. I think that was the real on-ramp. So not just D&D and the RPG path, but like that whole like acceptance of that as being okay, then translating into people looking around and going like, well, what else is like this? You know what I mean? Sean says, A Boy and His Dog is my absolute favorite movie. Oh my God, I got another super chat. Holy crap. Marie Span says, most grimdark movie ever is A Boy and His Dog. You're not wrong. It's pretty grim. It was a book first though. I think it was an adaptation, wasn't it? Yeah. You don't ever look at Don Johnson the same way after that, really. John Ashley Smith says, Strike Team Alpha was a game designer's workshop game, softcover rulebook with counters to photocopy, but Ralph Arthur did 25 millimeter miniatures for it. Cool. I did not know. I'll look it up. By the Zach says, have you ever started writing a game and found it already exists? I dreamt up a sweet tabletop version of the Warriors only to find Street Wars New York City exists. Yeah, but everything exists. Like, don't let that get in your way. Tell yourself whenever you look something up and be like, I feel like somebody maybe got here first. No, they didn't, because they're not going to make it how you make it. And they're not going to interpret the thing that you're excited about the same way as you. Don't be afraid to do it. Don't let anything in the same space as you stop you from making the thing you feel compelled to make, I guess is what I would say. Kudos Buddha says, I tried doing paintball in helmet videos years back. It's very difficult to get right. Yeah, I think that's why they mostly do the weapon sight cameras for the most part. It's a little easier. Caldorf says, I really want an auto duel Car Wars cooperative video game. Like Interstate 76 was the closest anyone ever came to doing that for me. Yeah, I've never played a co-op one. I can't even think of one. Yeah. I'm really excited for Pacific Drive. I got to find a way to play Pacific Drive because I love the Long Dark. One of my favorite, eventually one of my Grimdark media picks for game. Wait, when did I get to do game? I get to do game in April. I think I know what I'm going to pick for game. I love the Long Dark. It is one of my favorite video games of all time. When I'm like sad or stressed out, I will just sit in the dark and play that game because it is such a meditative, like, survival simulator. It's made by like one of the Canadian art grants, and it's just a story about what happened if you're a bush pilot and there's like a solar storm and you crash land into this like kind of rust belt island in the middle of winter. It's so good. It's such a good game. And Pacific Highway looks a bit like the Long Dark except Roadside Picnic. And I'm so fucking into that. That sounds amazing. Like, I'm really actually kind of pumped for that. Ewan Smith says, you could use a GoPro with image stabilization in your workcore reporting. Yeah, I could. I've fucked with GoPros before. I have a couple of them. I use them for like wide angle shooting, and I use them to travel because they're so portable and light. Obviously, that's a big thing with GoPros. And the GoPro I have is actually, it's a 4 because it's one of the original, like when it was cheap, because I was just going to mess with it. So I wanted to see what it was. And it was the first one that shot 4K. So I could get away with using it. I really want to try it for a couple of things, but I still don't think that there is a new neck stabilized shooting rig that's like a chest cam, almost like a body cam, but it's stabilized because it's on a gimbal that I would consider trying, but it's only for phones right now. Yeah. I like a gimbal stabilized chest rig might work. There's a lot there, but I don't want to bore people with that. But that is a technology I've literally tried to like look into. The problem with GoPros typically is that you got to crop the image afterwards because this is another like sausage gets made thing because they all shoot wide angle to try and capture because the lens is so small. They're shooting wide angle just to get a proper field of view. Otherwise, you'd be pinhole and everything and you wouldn't catch what you're trying to catch. So without like an adaptive lens, you got to crop the image usually, and then you're going to lose resolution because you're cropping a 4K image. It becomes kind of a nightmare. There's a lot of pre-processing then, because what you have to do is you have to crop the image you want, process it out of 4K into something that you can then usually work with. Because I don't like editing in 4K because it's just until GMG like grows to the point where I can buy a Mac Studio. Because I was talking with this with Chris from Way the Brush actually. He was like, "Hey, what are you working with?" Blah blah. And he just got himself a Mac Studio, and I'm deeply jealous because a Mac Studio would. All of my editing time issues would go away so fast if I had a Mac Studio. It's such a huge leap from having I've got these like Facebook Marketplace late generation 2015 iMacs that I'm working on that are all Intel and they're okay. Like they're great. They're great for what I'm doing. And they've done a whole bunch, but they're definitely not top of the line. and he's working top of the line, which would fix a bunch of my like workflow issues. Nathan Anderson, my favorite bit of headcanon is that Caddyshack is a prequel to Brazil. That is very funny. Bashir Goose, I think it is, or Gauss. I was curious on how Wargames designers test small indie games. I work in tabletop RPGs, and it seems like it'd be harder to get the pop for a test you'd need in Wargaming. It's actually not. So one of the things with like testing Wargaming stuff is your intent. Because if you're trying to design a balanced, symmetrical war game, you just start with the symmetrical pieces, and you can do a lot of your base testing yourself just to make sure the engine runs. And then after that, you just introduce offset elements as you go. And it's typically like turn limited and outcome driven. So like it's actually easier to test almost in a vacuum without people. And then what you do is you just let it loose, and typically you can get a ton of feedback just from showing it to somebody or putting it up for free somewhere. A lot of people are keen to work and design and test games or see them early. So it's actually not hard to get playtest feedback. And the sample group doesn't have to be huge because you have the difference in tabletop RPGs is you don't have situational control the way you have in miniature war games. Miniature war games are like, imagine everything in your tabletop RPG had to fit into one room. It's more like an escape room experience, so you can curate it better. Versus in a big tabletop RPG, you're trying to account for everything someone might do and give like a generic outcome or response for it. So like, Jay was describing to me a problem in a TTRPG that was like that. What it was there was a TTRPG that you played where, I think it's the new Critical Role one, you only take damage when you attack a monster. And so if you just walk into a room full of monsters, they can't attack you. Like mechanically in the rules of the game, you can, like, they're just on pause if you just walk around them. You can non-combat every situation because the monsters literally in the game design can't hurt you unless you engage with them. And kind of no one figured that out. And it was like, I kind of get that by design, but also like, did no one think about this? Like, I get that it's kind of like a pacifist thing, but how is there any kind of like impetus to do anything if nothing can hurt you? Right? Like it was a weird like design hole that someone I guess didn't see that ended up in this game. And Jay was describing it to me. You have complete control over that experience, and the game doesn't end until one side starts moving their pieces. So like you get more balance in your own writing that the players have to conform to. Whereas the open-endedness of TTRPGs is not. You need bigger playtesting because you can never guess what of the infinite possibilities people might try and do. Malev says the thing for me was that very idea that Mordheim couldn't come back is probably exactly why it will. Yeah, Mordheim would be the Borderlands the movie of miniature wargame re-releases. I think you're right. Nick Welch says, is GDM really Grimdark Mac? No, it's not. It's made on a Grimdark Mac, though. Myth was an RTS style game, right? Bungie started that? Maybe. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. The Fallen Lords is an old strategy game. There's a Mandalore video on it. I'll check it out. What else we got? Isn't that all Mac Media? Just as I'm an old man too, yeah. Late 20s, early 40s, dang kids. Yeah, Ewan's on the top end of that. Same with me. Taster Moose says, damn it, I'm outside that window. You're fine, dude. Ben, you're fine. Also, when are you coming down here? Josh Smith says, everybody's old. Everybody's just sounding off on how old they are. The treadmill life chooses you. Oh my God, I'm catching up to myself now. It's very funny how far behind I am in the chat because the chat's really big right now. There's like over 100 people talking, so I'm like trying to catch up to it. All right, we're just about done. So I'm going to take a couple more questions from the chat just real fast, see if I can get a couple of them, because I can come back to the ones I didn't get from the patrons, but you guys won't be here for another month, so I'll see what I can do. I'd love a bush pilot game where you actually explore with the plane. That'd be cool. There was like a game like that. It's kind of sci-fi though. You're like trying to find your like mentor's stuff and you're flying around. The Long Dark has been heavily imitated now in like the last 10 years. So there's got to be a bunch of them. Writer 1999 says, Long Dark rules. It does rule. Like just the sound design. Oof, it's so good. Sean Bailey says, oh, live content. Hello from Southern Alberta and my work comp. Hi, Sean. I hope you're well. Kuzma says, I have a 360 GoPro and it's awful to use. Yeah, they are awful to use. Adragon says, how far down the list is more 5 Leagues from the Borderlands? You spoiled me last year with weekly episodes. I'm going to talk to Ivan. I want to do 5 Parsecs next because I haven't done it yet. I'm going to talk to Ivan. He sent me some dates we could possibly talk to each other, which I need to catch up on. I got a bunch of admin stuff to do because it's Monday after this is done. So I'm going to talk to him and then I'm going to think about what I'm going to do next with that. But like I want to do Warlord Ascendant. Like there's so many things where like, if I circle back to something, it's because there's nothing in that theme right now in like the conveyor belt. So it probably won't be for a minute, but I did love those games. Gives Math Boy, fund me my video camera and editing studio. I do need to buy a 4K. So what's happening now is the old cameras I used to use are becoming the 2-shot cameras in here because I need to get a 4K camera for the actual back warehouse that can run XLR cables so I can do the audio properly. There's a lot of things on the list, but the XLR allows me to mount the audio panel into the camera so I can do audio directly into the cam, which is nice. Bashir Ghost. Okay, it's like house with a G. Perfect. I got it right at the end. Amazing. Crownblades here. Greetings from the town of Maribor on the island of Lolland, the Kingdom of Denmark. Wow. Thank you for that. That's an incredible... I feel like I just announced your arrival. That's fantastic. What else we got? Ryan says the first 50 games I played of Anthems of War were versus me. Absolutely, right? So Ryan designed this really cool game called Anthems of War, which I reviewed, but I haven't gotten to play yet because it's a versus game. It'll be one of the ones that like probably me and Chase will end up playing because we both just have random collections of fantasy figs. And I can attest that is exactly how this stuff usually starts. But again, that control allows you to do stuff. Alexander Marquez says, are you still looking for Mordheim terrain? I have multiple 6-sided buildings and a bunch of the parts from the core and Blood in the Streets. If you got the 6-sided building, I haven't had anybody contact me about that yet. That'd be amazing. I do have a friend who just sent a bunch of stuff. Hold off. If you want to email me about the 6-sided building, that's awesome. But wait for if you have parts especially, wait for the first video you see Jordan in. Because I'll know what I have at that point, and those videos I'll record hopefully with an expanded terrain set. Because I don't know what the condition some of the stuff that I've so far managed to acquire is going to show up in, and I'm hoping it's good and I don't need to source any more parts, but I might need odds and ends. What else we got? Lorcan Nagels here. I feel we need a Happy Light Media series at one point. If I remember correctly, there was an RPG that tied some 80s cartoon that had no combat system. Alan Monk says, oh, I got people organizing Gaslands games in the chat. That's amazing. I've seen food reviews of the chess camera they can have both hands. I think that's true. Sweet. All right. Everyone's just raging Gasland games now. So I'm done. We're after an hour. That was amazing. Well, holy crap. Over 100 people. That was such a great hangout, guys. If you're a patron and I didn't get your questions in, I will get them into next Mondays. We'll just leave them in the mailbag. So I'll get them when we get there. Yeah, I've got Christian going back on Friday to do more Silver Bayonet. So when you see Silver Bayonet tomorrow, there's more on the way. You got Dungeon Crawl Classic this week. You've got more Dam 25 this week. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, and you got the first Inside Tabletop with my friend Christian. So you got lots to come. I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks so much for hanging out. This was a fantastic, just good, feel good vibes thing with everybody. So if you had a chance to stop by, or you're watching this in the future, I hope you have a great week. I hope you guys get to do all the wargaming that you want to do. And if not, you go outside, see the sun, take a walk, and just feel good with the rest of your days to come. If you're a patron, I'll see you on Monday, and I'll catch you up on what happened over the course of the weekend. And if you're not, I will see you in a month for the next. Remember the free episodes, the like open house kind of stuff for the sit and talk is the last Monday of each month. So it'll be the last Monday of March. You'll see me to hang out. So set your calendars. Click the little bell, set a reminder, and we will hang out and see you guys then. Have a great day, everybody.